Back in the early 1960s, Detroit was quietly pushing the rules. Automakers were slipping factory-backed race cars out the back door and onto drag strips, finding creative loopholes to satisfy a growing crowd of speed-obsessed fans. Pontiac, a brand gaining serious momentum at the time, was already flexing its performance muscles before the term muscle car even had a real definition. Most people point straight to the GTO, and to be fair, it earned its reputation. But behind the scenes, Pontiac was working on something far more extreme. This machine was lighter, nastier, and built with zero concern for showroom appeal. It wasn't designed to impress casual buyers or look good under dealership lights. This was all business. A purpose-built weapon with one goal in mind: total domination at the drag strip. And while the GTO went on to become a household name, this other Pontiac slipped into the shadows, earning legendary status only among the most dedicated enthusiasts. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the forgotten Pontiac that made even the mighty goat seem civilized. The name Tempest Super Duty rarely comes up in everyday muscle car conversations, but it absolutely should. Built in 1963, this radical factory experiment from Pontiac was essentially a hand-assembled weapon, created for one reason and one reason only: to dominate the National Hot Rod Association Superstock class. Unlike the mass-produced GTOs that followed, the Super Duty Tempest was a low-volume, race-only brute. Fewer than 12 were ever built. Yes, just 12. And that kind of rarity alone is enough to make collectors and historians stop in their tracks. Under the hood sat a 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8, an engine Pontiac engineered with performance as the top priority and comfort completely off the list. It featured dual 4-barrel carburetors, fully forged internal components, and a factory rating of 405 horsepower, a number widely believed to be understated. This was drag strip tuning in its purest form. Paired with a lightweight body and true race-spec hardware, the Super Duty Tempest launched hard and charged through the quarter-mile with a level of aggression few cars of its era could match. Calling the Tempest Super Duty rare almost undersells just how extreme the situation really was. A more accurate description would be barely existed. Pontiac built only 6 coupes and 6 wagons, for a total of just 12 cars, every single one hand-assembled inside Pontiac's engineering department. These weren't normal production line vehicles by any stretch. They were put together by engineers who knew this project had nothing to do with showroom sales and everything to do with winning races. The shockingly low production numbers weren't just about exclusivity, they were also about survival. At the time, General Motors had a strict corporate ban on factory-backed racing. Officially, Pontiac wasn't supposed to be involved at all. Unofficially, they found a workaround. Rather than entering cars themselves, Pontiac quietly handed these Tempest Super Duties directly to private racers, with a subtle nudge and a knowing wink. Comfort was completely off the table. These cars skipped every creature feature imaginable. No radios, no sound insulation. In some cases, even the rear seats were removed. Anything that didn't make the car faster was tossed aside. Weight was the enemy, performance was the mission, and every decision reflected that single-minded focus. At a glance, the 1963 Tempest didn't look like a tire-shredding monster. From the outside, it carried the same clean, understated shape as any other mid-size Pontiac of the era. Nothing about its appearance hinted at what it was truly capable of. But beneath that ordinary skin was something completely radical. The biggest surprise was its rear-mounted transaxle setup, a layout almost unheard of in American performance cars at the time, and virtually non-existent in muscle machines. Instead of the transmission and differential sitting up front, they were mounted in the rear. That unconventional design dramatically improved weight distribution, giving the Tempest near-perfect balance when launching off the line. It was a clever, forward-thinking solution, and one of the secret weapons that made this unassuming Pontiac so devastating on the drag strip. That unusual layout was matched with an even stranger piece of engineering: a solid drive shaft made from a flexible steel cable, running inside a curved torque tube, a setup Pontiac engineers casually nicknamed the rope drive. It's the kind of idea that sounds insane on paper and makes you wonder how it ever made it past the sketch phase, let alone onto a drag strip. And yet, it worked. That balanced layout delivered outstanding traction during hard launches, allowing the Tempest Super Duty to hook up aggressively, while other cars struggled for grip. Off the line, it was an absolute nightmare for the competition. The wagon versions took things a step further. Thanks to their longer wheelbase, they were even more stable on launch, and the extra cargo space meant racers could haul spare parts, tools, or tires right in the back. It made them brutally effective and incredibly practical. The perfect weapon for serious drag racers who wanted to drive to the track, unload their gear, and start winning. A lot of people automatically crown cars like the GTO or the Chevelle SS 454 as the undisputed kings of the 1960s. But the truth is, very few machines could come close to the performance of a properly dialed-in Tempest Super Duty. Period-correct drag strip runs tell the story clearly. These cars were ripping off mid-11-second quarter-mile times straight out of the box. And that was on 1963 tires, suspension, and tuning. Give one modern slicks and a handful of light upgrades, and the Super Duty Tempest had no problem charging deep into the 10-second range. That kind of performance didn't just embarrass rivals. It completely rewrote what people thought a factory-built car was capable of in that era. Those numbers were absolutely outrageous for the time. To put it in perspective, a brand new 1963 Corvette split-window coupe was running the quarter mile in the 15-second range, and the legendary 426 Hemi hadn't even arrived yet. That wouldn't happen until 1964. Pontiac wasn't just ahead of the curve. They were operating on an entirely different timeline. In full race trim, the Tempest Super Duty went on a brief but brutal rampage across the National Hot Rod Association circuit. For a short window, it flat-out dominated, until corporate pressure from General Motors stepped in and tightened the leash. As the factory racing bans became more serious, many of the original 12 cars were pulled from competition, retired early, or quietly sold into private hands. But during its short-lived reign, the damage was already done. The Tempest Super Duty cemented its reputation as one of the quickest, most extreme factory-built muscle cars to ever touch a drag strip. A car that proved Pontiac was playing for keeps long before the rest of Detroit caught up. When you add up the outrageous performance, the off-the-wall engineering, and the razor-thin production numbers, it's easy to see why the Tempest Super Duty isn't just a collectible, it's the collectible. When one actually surfaces for sale, the prices are nothing short of staggering. Valuations from Hagerty regularly place these cars deep into the seven-figure range, assuming they still retain their original engine and key components. And that's a big if, because finding one at all is becoming nearly impossible. Even among the most hardcore collectors, the Tempest Super Duty has taken on almost mythical status. Some were wrecked in competition. Others were parted out when they were just viewed as old race cars. Only a handful survived intact, often held onto by racers or quietly stored away for decades. One example sold back in 2010 for more than $400,000, and that was over a decade ago. Today, that number could easily be double or even triple. Because it was never meant to be mainstream, the Tempest Super Duty has always lived in the shadow of its more famous sibling, the GTO. But for those who truly know Pontiac history, there's no debate about which car is rarer, faster, and more fascinating. This is one of those machines that makes you wish Pontiac never had to play by the rules. Pontiac may have written the rule book on American muscle with the GTO, but the Tempest Super Duty was the brand's secret chapter. A wild, high-revving experiment that pushed engineering and performance far beyond what anyone expected. It wasn't built for showrooms. It was built to win. And in the world of drag racing legends, it did exactly that.
body to create a machine built for one thing, dominating the drag strip. The goal was clear: take on the NHRA Superstock classes, and to do that, Chevrolet needed a street-legal version, so the ZL1 Camaro was born. Officially, the engine was rated at 430 horsepower, but just like many performance cars of that era, that number was extremely conservative. In reality, these engines were known to produce well over 500 horsepower, making them absolute monsters for the late 1960s. And the performance backed it up. According to testing by High Performance Cars, the ZL1 Camaro could run the quarter mile in 13.16 seconds at 110 miles per hour on stock street tires. That's an incredible achievement, especially considering how raw and unrefined these cars were compared to modern performance machines. But there was a catch. In order to qualify for NHRA competition, Chevrolet had to sell at least 50 units to the public, and these weren't cheap. In fact, the ZL1 option alone cost nearly as much as the base price of the car itself, making it one of the most expensive Camaros you could buy at the time. Even so, Chevrolet managed to sell 69 examples in total. That limited production, combined with its racing pedigree and insane performance, has made the ZL1 Camaro one of the rarest and most desirable muscle cars ever built, and easily one of the most iconic Copo creations of all time. Number 3, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro SS 396L89, 13-second flat quarter-mile run. By 1969, the first-generation Camaro was entering its final year before a full redesign, but Chevrolet definitely didn't let it go out quietly. In fact, this was one of the most refined and performance-focused versions of the car yet, especially when you look at models like the Chevrolet Camaro SS 396L89. Now, outside of the wild Copo builds, buyers still had access to some seriously potent engine options. Among them were several versions of the 396 cubic inch turbojet V8, but the one that really stood out was the L89. This wasn't just another trim, it was a carefully engineered upgrade aimed squarely at performance enthusiasts. At its core, the L89 was based on the already impressive L78, which was rated at 375 horsepower, but what made the L89 special was the addition of aluminum cylinder heads. That change might not sound huge at first, but it reduced weight over the front end and improved overall efficiency, giving the Camaro better balance and stronger performance both on the street and at the drag strip. Of course, that kind of upgrade didn't come cheap. The L89 was an expensive option, and it was clearly aimed at buyers who cared more about performance than price. This was a Camaro built with one purpose in mind: going fast. And according to testing by Supercar Annual, it absolutely delivered. In period tests, the Camaro SS 396L89 managed to run the quarter mile in a flat 13 seconds at 108.6 miles per hour. Those are seriously strong numbers, especially for a non-Copo Camaro. What's even more interesting is that on paper, that performance actually put it slightly ahead of the legendary ZL1 Camaro. But there's a bit of mystery there. The test didn't go into detail about the exact setup of the car, things like tuning, gearing, or conditions, so it's hard to say whether that result truly reflects a fair comparison. Still, whether it was quicker than the ZL1 or not is up for debate. What isn't debatable is its rarity. Chevrolet produced just 311 examples of the SS 396L89 in 1969, making it one of the rarest and most overlooked high-performance Camaros of the era, and a serious gem for collectors today. Number 2, 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner 446 BBL, 12.91 seconds. When Plymouth introduced the Roadrunner in 1967, the mission was simple: build a no-nonsense, affordable muscle car that delivered serious performance without breaking the bank. And that's exactly what the Plymouth Roadrunner became. With its bold styling, wide range of options, and focus on straight-line speed, it didn't take long for it to explode in popularity. Fast forward to 1969, and the Roadrunner had evolved into one of the most formidable muscle cars you could buy. What made it even more impressive was that it didn't rely on the legendary but expensive 426 Hemi to earn that reputation. Instead, many enthusiasts started looking at a different setup that arrived midway through the model year, and it turned out to be a game changer. That setup was the now iconic 440 cubic inch big block V8 paired with a trio of 2-barrel Holley carburetors. Officially called the 446 BBL, but more commonly known as the 6-barrel, this engine delivered a factory rating of 390 horsepower. On paper, it might not have sounded as intimidating as the Hemi, but in the real world, it proved to be just as, if not more, effective. One of the biggest advantages was cost. The 6-barrel setup was significantly cheaper than the Hemi option, making high performance more accessible. But even more importantly, it delivered incredible results where it mattered most: on the drag strip. According to testing by Superstock and Drag Illustrated, a Roadrunner equipped with the 446 BBL could blast through the quarter mile in just 12.91 seconds. That's seriously quick, especially for a car that offered this level of performance at a more attainable price point. In the end, the 6-barrel Roadrunner perfectly captured what muscle cars were all about: maximum performance, minimal compromise, and just the right amount of attitude. For many enthusiasts, it wasn't just the smarter choice over the Hemi, it was the better one. Number 1, 1969 Yenko Camaro 427 SYC, quarter mile time 12.59 seconds. Beyond the legendary Chevelle builds, Don Yenko was also making serious waves with a lineup of Copo Camaros in 1969, but this wasn't something new for Yenko. He had already been dropping 427 engines into Camaros as far back as 1967, turning them into street-legal drag machines long before the factory officially got involved. The difference now was the Copo system. Instead of modifying cars after delivery, Yenko could finally order Camaros straight from Chevrolet with the L72 427 already installed. That made the whole process more efficient and allowed him to build and sell these high-performance monsters in greater numbers, 201 units to be exact. The result was the iconic Yenko Camaro 427, a car that combined factory muscle with dealer-level tuning. Just like earlier Yenko builds, these Camaros didn't come stock for long. They received a range of Yenko-specific upgrades, along with distinctive striping and badging that made sure everyone knew this wasn't your average Camaro. Under the hood, the L72 engine was officially rated at 450 horsepower, delivering brutal, no-nonsense performance. But the real magic happened when buyers opted for all the available Yenko performance extras. With the full package, this Camaro transformed into an absolute force on the drag strip, and the numbers prove it. In the August 1969 issue of Superstock and Drag Illustrated, a fully prepped Yenko Camaro tore down the quarter mile in an incredible 12.59 seconds at 108.2 miles per hour. For its time, that was nothing short of jaw-dropping. With its combination of factory-backed engineering, dealer tuning, and serious straight-line speed, the Yenko Camaro 427 earned its place as one of the true kings of the quarter mile, and one of the most respected muscle cars of its era.